Machiavelli understood something about power that almost no one today is willing to admit. Institutions do not fear the incompetent, they fear the independent. And that is why the elite despise the self-taught. Not because self-taught people lack discipline, structure, or credentials, but because they lack control. Control that institutions want, control that elites depend on, control that rulers, educators, and gatekeepers have relied upon for centuries to maintain their authority. A self-taught individual is dangerous because he breaks the chain of obedience. He learns without permission. He grows without supervision. He succeeds without validation. He becomes what Machiavelli feared most in political systems, a person who does not need the approval of power to gain power. In The Prince, Machiavelli wrote that rulers always fear those who rise by their own arms, meaning by their own strength, their own mind, their own ability. He warned that those who elevate themselves without relying on the elite become unpredictable, uncontrollable, and ungovernable. Why? Because they owe nothing. And nothing is more terrifying to those in control than a person who owes them nothing. The elite prefer followers who are shaped, molded, standardized, certified, and categorized, because those people can be managed. But the self-taught person escapes the system. He learns sideways, he moves diagonally, he finds paths the elite never intended anyone to see. He does not bow to authority because he is not built by authority. Machiavelli observed that elites survive by creating illusions: the illusion of expertise, the illusion of exclusivity, the illusion that knowledge must be granted from above, never earned from within. Self-taught people shatter these illusions simply by existing. When a man learns on his own, he exposes a secret the elites spend centuries trying to hide. Knowledge was never theirs to control. And that truth is enough to destabilize entire hierarchies. Because once people realize they can learn without permission, they begin to question everything else they were told to obey. This is why Machiavelli said, the powerful do not truly fear rebels or criminals or traitors. They fear thinkers, independents, outliers, people whose minds are not owned. The self-taught are the natural enemies of the elite, not because they resist authority, but because they make authority irrelevant. Machiavelli understood a truth that governments, universities, and ruling classes still refuse to say out loud. A self-taught mind is a mind they cannot map, and what cannot be mapped cannot be controlled. He wrote that rulers fear what is unpredictable more than what is hostile. An enemy with a uniform can be identified. A rebel with a flag can be targeted. But a thinker with no allegiance, no institutional stamp, no ideological leash, that person is invisible to the mechanisms of power. This is why the elite punish the self-educated without ever saying they are doing so. They dismiss them with quiet contempt. They treat them as anomalies. They exclude them from opportunity while praising open access. They pretend to value intelligence while secretly valuing obedience. Because Machiavelli warned, the independent thinker cannot be bribed, and what cannot be bribed cannot be governed. Institutions rely on predictable pathways: school, degree, job, approval, advancement. A staircase built by the elite so they can decide who climbs it, who pauses, who falls. But the self-taught person refuses the staircase entirely. He climbs the mountain from another side. He builds his own tools. He teaches himself what others pay to be told. He enters doors he was never qualified to approach. And that alone disrupts the illusion that credentials equals competence. Elites depend on that illusion for survival. If people realized that mastery comes from discipline, curiosity, repetition, and hunger, not institutional blessing, the gates of power would crumble. And Machiavelli saw this pattern 500 years ago. Gatekeepers hate anything that proves the gate unnecessary. The self-taught person is proof that the gate is not real, that the wall was psychological, not structural, that the barrier existed only in the mind, not in the world. And when the masses see one independent thinker rise, they begin to wonder, if he can do it without permission, why can't I? This question is the nightmare of every elite class, because a population that believes it can educate itself soon believes it can govern itself, and a population that governs itself no longer needs rulers. This is why the elite do not fear the violent. They fear the self-taught. Because violence can be crushed, but an idea that grows outside the system cannot be killed.
Machiavelli believed that every ruling class survives through predictability, not justice, not intelligence, not merit. Predictability. A predictable population is easy to rule. A predictable worker is easy to exploit. A predictable thinker is easy to shape, and a predictable student is easy to certify. This is why the elite love licenses, degrees, badges, titles, papers, not because these symbols prove mastery, but because they prove submission to the system that issued them. A license is not permission to work. It is proof that you passed through their hands, but the self-taught mind passes through no one's hands. Machiavelli saw that people who educate themselves become something profoundly dangerous. They think without permission. They learn without validation. They move without supervision. This terrifies institutions because institutions depend on hierarchy, and the self-taught person does not recognize hierarchy as real. He recognizes skill, accuracy, results, insight. But titles? He treats them the same way he treats superstition. Interesting, but irrelevant. The elite hate this. A person who broke into knowledge alone can break into opportunity alone. And a person who can break into opportunity can break into power. Machiavelli wrote that rulers fear any force that does not owe them loyalty. A soldier is loyal to a king. A bureaucrat is loyal to a system. A student is loyal to a school, but the self-taught man is loyal only to truth. And loyalty to truth creates internal power, a power no institution can confiscate. This internal power becomes visible in subtle ways. He speaks differently. He thinks faster. He questions what others accept. He refuses beliefs that collapse under scrutiny. He doesn't rely on approval to feel valid. He walks like someone who built himself, because he did. And this is the ultimate threat, because once a man knows he can build himself, he realizes he can build anything: a career, a reputation, a philosophy, a life. Self-created people break the illusion of dependency. They prove that greatness is not granted from above, but carved from within. And if enough people learn this, the elite lose the one thing they value more than power: control. This is why the self-taught are hated, not because they are ignorant, but because they are free. Machiavelli understood something that modern society still refuses to admit out loud. Institutions don't exist to create excellence. They exist to create obedience. A king does not want soldiers who think. A corporation does not want workers who question. A state does not want citizens who analyze. A university does not want minds that wander beyond its walls. Why? Because obedience is profitable. Obedience is stable. Obedience is predictable. And predictable people make predictable empires. This is the machine the elite depend on. They build systems designed to reward compliance, not genius. Degrees are rewards for memorizing. Promotions are rewards for behaving. Certifications are rewards for belonging. You are not tested on creativity. You are tested on conformity. This is why the self-taught mind is so feared. It slips through the machinery. It refuses to be processed, measured, inspected, labeled, or domesticated. A self-taught person does not think in straight lines. He thinks in explosions. He sees connections institutions never teach because institutions fear what those connections reveal. He studies at 3 a.m. because he wants to, not because a syllabus demands it. He reads what inspires him, not what is approved by committees. He challenges teachers, not because he disrespects them, but because truth matters more than hierarchy. That makes him unpredictable, and unpredictability dismantles power. Machiavelli wrote that rulers fear those who obey out of choice, because a person who chooses to obey can also choose to resist. The elite want obedience that cannot be withdrawn, but the self-taught never gave it in the first place. This is why they are mocked, dismissed, minimized, why institutions call them unqualified, even when they outperform the qualified, why elites label them dangerous, even when all they did was think too deeply. Because the truth is simple. A self-directed mind is sovereign. A sovereign mind cannot be ruled, and a population of sovereign minds cannot be controlled. Self-education is not a method, it is a rebellion, a quiet revolution against the idea that knowledge must be purchased, permission must be granted, and value must be certified. And in a world built on obedience, the self-taught become outlaws by simply thinking for themselves. There is a reason every empire in history, from Rome to the modern world, worked endlessly to control what people learn, what they read, what they hear, and what they believe. Because Machiavelli understood a timeless truth. A ruler's greatest threat is the man who learns without permission. The elite fear this type of person because he's invisible to their system. He doesn't rely on institutional approval. He doesn't need validation from a professor, a manager, or a governing body. He rises in silence without asking for the key to the kingdom. He sharpens his mind like a hidden blade. You see, institutions track you through your compliance, your grades, your licenses, your credentials, your performance reviews. That is how they measure who you are, and more importantly, how controllable you are. But the self-taught man, he cannot be measured. He learns in the shadows of libraries. He listens when others are asleep. He studies subjects universities dare not to offer. He sees through propaganda because he never swallowed it in the first place. And worst of all for the elite, his knowledge has no leash. A system can revoke your certification. It can deny you a degree. It can fire you from a job. It can blacklist your name. But it cannot take away the skills you carved into your own mind. This is what terrifies power structures. A man who educates himself becomes self-reliant. Self-reliance becomes independence. Independence becomes sovereignty. And sovereignty becomes political danger. This is why Machiavelli warned rulers to keep the public ignorant but entertained, because an open mind can topple a throne more effectively than any army. The elite don't hate self-taught people because they are ignorant. They hate them because they are unowned. A self-taught mind is not loyal to institutions. It is loyal to truth. It cannot be bribed with status. It cannot be manipulated with fear. It cannot be silenced with shame. It grows where it wants, expands how it wants, and becomes a threat the moment it sees through the illusions power depends on. This is why the elite look at self-taught individuals with suspicion, not because they underestimate them, but because they recognize what they are: uncontrolled, unpredictable, unconditioned. Exactly the kind of person Machiavelli warned rulers never to ignore. Machiavelli wrote something brilliant, subtle, and almost invisible to the casual reader. Yet it is the single most threatening idea any elite class can face. He who is taught by necessity becomes master of himself. Think about that. A person who learns because he must, not because he is instructed, develops a mind that cannot be governed. When a man chooses to educate himself, not for a degree, not for applause, not for prestige, but for survival, transformation, and truth, he becomes fundamentally different from everyone around him. Schools teach information, but self-education teaches instinct. And instinct is power. A self-taught person develops the rarest capability in the modern world, the ability to think without permission. This is why the elite fear them more than rebels, activists, or critics. Rebels can be silenced, critics can be discredited, movements can be infiltrated and dismantled, but a self-taught individual, he is a threat that cannot be mapped. He doesn't move with the crowd. He doesn't follow intellectual trends. He doesn't rely on the system for direction, purpose, or identity. He builds his own framework of meaning and his own strategy of survival. This makes him impossible to predict. Machiavelli warned rulers that unpredictable individuals create instability in any hierarchy because they think in ways systems cannot anticipate, respond in ways authority cannot control, and grow in ways institutions cannot stop. A self-taught mind becomes resilient because he failed without support, flexible because he adapted without guidance, dangerous because he succeeded without permission. And this is something the elite cannot replicate. They can train people, they can certify people, they can indoctrinate people, but they cannot create a free thinker. They can't even understand one. To the elite, the self-taught person looks like chaos wrapped in discipline, a mind that sharpened itself outside the architecture of power. That makes him a ghost in the machine. He can't be bribed with titles, he can't be threatened with exclusion, he can't be humiliated with labels like unqualified or unprofessional. He walks outside the system's leash, and a man without a leash is a man without a master. This is why Machiavelli said rulers should fear anyone who holds power only within himself, because such a man cannot be ruled, only respected or eliminated. To understand why the elite hate self-taught people, you must first understand what education really means in a society built on hierarchy. Because despite the beautiful speeches, the inspiring slogans, and the polished graduation ceremonies, education has never been about enlightenment. It has always been about alignment. Alignment with the system, alignment with accepted narratives, alignment with the worldview that benefits those in power. Machiavelli understood this centuries before modern institutions existed. He said rulers must shape the minds of the people so they remain predictable, and nothing shapes a mind more effectively than education presented as truth. Not truth itself, the illusion of truth. This is why the elite fear self-taught individuals. A self-taught mind doesn't swallow pre-approved truths. He questions every origin. He traces knowledge back to the source. He separates facts from institutional propaganda. He sees where narratives serve power more than they serve reality. And once a person can do that, he becomes almost impossible to manipulate. Traditional education teaches you what to think. Self-education teaches you how to think. Traditional education tells you what is acceptable. Self-education reveals what is real. Traditional education polishes your obedience. Self-education sharpens your rebellion. This is why the elite designed systems that reward conformity. The right answers get you good grades. The right behavior gets you promoted. The right credentials give you social status. The right opinions make you respectable. But none of this builds intelligence. It builds compliance disguised as intelligence. A self-taught person sees the trick. He sees that most people aren't educated, they're conditioned. He sees that most people don't think, they repeat. He sees that most people don't research, they defend what they were told. And because he sees it, he cannot be controlled by it. To the elite, this is catastrophic. Because once even a single person escapes the educational illusion, they can lead others out as well. And nothing terrifies power more than enlightenment spreading outside the boundaries of authority. Machiavelli warned rulers to fear those who awaken outside your influence, because they are not only dangerous, they are contagious. One freethinker becomes 10. 10 become 100. Now the system begins to crack, and the elite know it. Machiavelli believed the greatest advantage a ruler could have over the population was predictability. Not the ruler being predictable, but the people being predictable. Predictable citizens are easy to manage. Predictable workers are easy to replace. Predictable thinkers are easy to deceive. Predictable students are easy to certify. Predictable voters are easy to control. And here is the uncomfortable truth. Traditional education is designed to produce predictable minds. A person who follows the same curriculum, absorbs the same worldview, repeats the same historical interpretations, accepts the same economic narratives, believes the same moral structures, becomes intellectually standardized. That standardization creates predictability. Predictability creates control. This is why the elite can forecast the behavior of educated individuals with incredible accuracy. They know what you will defend, what you will fear, what you will aspire to, what you will believe, and even what you will consider impossible. The educated majority moves along a path designed for them, a path with invisible walls and acceptable destinations. But the self-taught, they wander off the map. A self-taught mind does not think linearly. He jumps between disciplines. He connects ideas the curriculum keeps separate. He studies motives instead of memorizing facts. He questions systems instead of trusting them. He learns from experience instead of assignments. This makes him utterly unpredictable. You can't anticipate his next move because he doesn't move according to intellectual programming. He builds his own framework of truth. He accepts what makes sense, not what is approved. He questions authority without fear of losing status. He analyzes the structure of power itself, not from inside it, but from above it. This vantage point gives him something the elite cannot tolerate: strategic awareness. Machiavelli believed that awareness, not loyalty, not obedience, determines who holds real power.